Every night, across 6 continents, people zip themselves into a few millimeters of nylon and go completely unconscious in places where something with claws and a working set of jaws is awake and hunting nearby. And almost none of them are touched. That sounds obvious until you sit with it for a second. A sleeping person is dead weight. No awareness, no defense, no escape plan. Breathing in a slow rhythm that practically advertises where they are. By any sensible definition of the word, you are exactly what a predator is built to find. So why doesn't it happen? Start with the basic timeline. Wolves, mountain lions, leopards, and grizzlies do most of their hunting in that window between dusk and dawn, the same hours you're asleep in a tent. They are awake, alert, and actively searching for a meal, and they already know exactly where you are. A grizzly's nose can pick out a scent from several miles downwind. A wolf's hearing is sharp enough to track movement through dense timber long before you'd ever notice it was there. A mountain lion can lie in cover less than 50 feet from your camp and never be seen. None of these animals are missing you. They've found you already. They're choosing not to come closer. The real question is why. Predators don't survive by being fearless. They survive by being careful. An animal that takes a reckless swing at something unfamiliar and comes away with a torn shoulder or a cracked tooth doesn't get a trip to a hospital, it gets a slow decline toward starvation. A wolf that gambles on the wrong target doesn't get a second attempt. Every large predator alive today is descended from ancestors who hesitated at the right moments, and something about a sleeping human doesn't add up to them at all. Predators are wired to read fear. A deer that senses danger freezes mid-step. A gazelle that's spotted a cheetah breaks into a dead sprint within seconds. Prey gives off a signal, and that signal is what flips on the chase instinct. You give off nothing. You lie still for hours. Your breathing slows into a flat, even rhythm. You don't startle, don't bolt, don't do anything a hunted animal is supposed to do. On top of that, you're radiating body heat, and you're covered in smells that don't belong to any animal in the forest. Synthetic fabric, sunscreen, the leftover scent of whatever you cooked for dinner, the faint trace of smoke clinging to your clothes. To a predator's nervous system, none of it reads as food. It reads as something it has never successfully categorized. There's a term in animal behavior for this. Neophobia, the instinctive avoidance of anything unfamiliar. Most large carnivores have it baked in because in the wild, the unfamiliar thing is statistically the dangerous thing. A new smell, an unrecognized shape, a sound that doesn't match anything in memory. The safest response is almost always to back away rather than investigate. Humans hit nearly every trigger on that list at once. There's also something biologists call a search image, the very specific mental template a predator builds for the prey it actually knows how to kill. A wolf's search image is built from years of chasing deer and elk. How they move, how they panic, how they break. You don't fit that template in any category. You're an anomaly, standing or lying outside the pattern it knows how to act on. But here's the part that really seals it. Humans have been killing large predators for an extraordinarily long time. Long before agriculture, long before written language. We trapped, speared, and later shot and poisoned wolves off entire continents. We hunted big cats to the edge of extinction across huge stretches of their former range. The predators that are still here are the direct descendants of the individuals who learned, generation after generation, that approaching humans was a losing bet. A sleeping rabbit is still just a rabbit. A sleeping human, to an animal that has inherited that caution, might as well be holding a weapon. Field researchers have documented this pattern again and again. Predator populations with a long history of human contact give people an enormous amount of space, while predators on islands or in regions with no history of human contact are often startlingly bold and curious around people. That fear isn't innate from birth, it's learned and passed down, and most predator populations on Earth have had thousands of years of practice. Now, attacks do happen. People are mauled by bears, stalked by mountain lions, occasionally hurt in their sleep. So what's actually going on in those cases? Pull apart the records and it almost always traces back to one of 3 breakdowns. The first is food conditioning. A bear that's spent seasons raiding coolers and dumpsters eventually stops filing humans under threat and starts filing them under vending machine. That's not boldness, it's a broken signal. A food-conditioned animal is genuinely more dangerous, not because its instincts improved, but because the entire risk calculation that normally keeps it away has been overwritten by easy calories. The second is desperation through injury. The Champawat tiger, blamed for hundreds of deaths across Nepal and northern India in the early 1900s, was eventually tracked down by the hunter Jim Corbett and found to have 2 broken canine teeth, almost certainly from an earlier gunshot wound that made hunting its normal prey nearly impossible. A predator that physically cannot catch what it's supposed to eat will eventually override every inherited rule it has. The third is surprise. Step on an animal hidden in brush, stumble into a den, corner a mother protecting cubs, and what follows isn't a hunt, it's self-defense. The animal isn't choosing you as prey. It's reacting to what it believes is an attack. Notice what's missing from that list. A healthy, well-fed predator calmly deciding a sleeping, harmless human is worth the risk for dinner. That scenario is close to non-existent. Every documented exception involves an animal that was sick, starving, food-conditioned, or cornered. Never one simply going about business as usual. There's one more layer to this most people never hear about. Even though you feel completely unconscious, your sleep isn't actually as deep as it feels. Human sleep cycles back through lighter stages every couple of hours, and during those lighter stages, your brain stays partially tuned to unusual sounds. A snapped branch, a shift in air pressure, a noise that doesn't belong. That's sometimes called the sentinel function of sleep, and it likely exists because our ancestors who slept too deeply to notice danger didn't live long enough to pass that trait on. You're not as defenseless as you feel. You're running a low-power alarm system the entire time you're out. Underneath all of it sits a much bigger story. For most of human history, the fear ran the other way. We built fires and walls and slept in groups because the dark genuinely was dangerous to us. But somewhere along that timeline, the balance flipped. We became too widespread, too consistently lethal, too deeply embedded in nearly every landscape on the planet for predators to keep treating us as just another animal to test. The ones that kept testing us didn't last. The ones that learned to leave us alone did. The shape moving through the trees outside your tent isn't deciding whether it can beat you. It's deciding whether you're worth the risk at all. And almost every single time, the answer comes back no. And the numbers back this up more than most people expect. Millions of nights are spent camping in bear, wolf, and mountain lion country every year, and fatal attacks on sleeping campers are vanishingly rare. Rare enough that you're more likely to be struck by lightning inside a national park than mauled in your tent overnight. The gap between how dangerous it feels and how dangerous it actually is comes down almost entirely to everything working quietly in your favor the moment you close your eyes. So the next time you're lying in a tent listening to something move through the dark outside and your brain starts running worst-case scenarios, remember what's actually happening. It already knows you're there. It smelled you arrive. It heard you settle in. It's been tracking the rhythm of your breathing this whole time, and it's still keeping its distance. Not because it couldn't close that gap in seconds, but because somewhere in its inherited wiring is a verdict written by every one of its ancestors who tested a human and lost. You were never the prey in that equation. You were the risk nobody wanted to take.